as all that. Wow, the negative thinking over there. Till Jesse says until we get banned. Wow, which is probably true. I'm not going to disagree with that. Big show coming up today. We'll have hopefully we'll have Doug McIntyre at the bottom of the hour. And then we'll get into all the news and views and Brawl at the Mall and all the other fun stuff that goes on. Got to keep the engineer entertained. You probably have it running on a loop. Slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday live at 5 on IE Newswire, both on Facebook, well, triple on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. And as Jesse said before, until we get kicked off of, that's why we're on 3 of them, because we're liable to get kicked off on, although we haven't been dumped on Facebook in a while, which is, knock on wood, yeah, this will probably be our last day on there then, because they'll probably dump us on the old blower on that, as they usually do. Lots of stuff coming up today. We got, Governor Hairgel, gruesome Gavin Newsom will be giving a state of the state of California. And I can sum that up in one word, well, couple words. We're in the toilet. That's about where we are in the state of the state. We'll be getting into that. Some interesting comments from UCLA professor Lee Oldham on that, and we'll be running some video clips of that here in a minute. Biden and his one of that, and I hope we'll be able to get to the Biden and Pepe Le Pew one here pretty soon. Reason Magazine has a real good deal on the lockdowns and where we're at, and had some pretty good points to make. We'll get to that here pretty soon. But as promised, the Brawl in the Mall, Bath and Body Works in Scottsdale, Arizona, had this little vignette going on. A couple of patrons got into it over standing too close to each other. Let's see what the video is. Yeah, people are fighting. She attacked her. No, I did not. She touched. She put her hands on me first. Give me my purse. I need my purse. I need my purse. I need my purse. Do not. I need my fucking purse. I need my. There you go. There's the it got really heated from there on top of that going across. And there was it was in the Washington Examiner article they added on there. The cops did that first. One lady, I guess there was one black and one white lady, and one took exception to them standing too close to each other. Now, the cops are saying that it wasn't about masks or anything like that. We'll see how that goes. Sergeant Kevin Cuon, boy, that's a heck of a name. The brawl was not over face masks or related to race, except there was a few racial epithets, and as you heard, the F words and all that were said during the deal. A couple of the officials out there, Joseph Kaplik, put on there on Twitter, is that, give me number 4, please. Bath and Body Works employees at Scottsdale Fashion Mall are being put in danger by the requirement that they enforce mask mandates. Female employees in the viral video could have been injured. My bill, HB 2770, lets businesses choose whether to enforce it. It passed the AZ House on that. Another comment by Rob Snyder, the comedian. I guess at Bath and Body Works, it's wear a mask or we'll beat the living blank out of you on that. So it isn't conclusive. The cop says it wasn't about masks, but if it wasn't about masks, then I don't know why, maybe
they were cutting line.
Oh, it was a cutting line? Well, that's a little bit different than just somebody, as it first reports in there, that they were just standing too close to each other. But that makes a little sense. Have you ever got it is annoying when people do jump in front of the line and you're cut. It happens. I don't do that much shopping of that, but it happens once in a while. I've never made an issue of it. I figure if somebody is really that big of a hurry, go ahead and go for it. If that's it. I don't know that it's worth getting into that much of a histrionics over there and getting in a brawl over the whole thing, but I thought that was kind of I think, and more of it probably withstands of what we're doing in our society today with all the crazy crap that we've got to endure, it seems like.
I thought it was
a candle sale. Well, that you could kind of understand if they were fighting over, whatever, giveaway product or whatever's on the deal. I could buy that somewhat, that it was going on, but we shall see of how the world turns on the old bandana. Another one, and the governor's State of the State address is coming up. Well, I guess the one word I would use is he should just walk out and say chaos, because that's the one word that describes our state of the state, especially in California, and probably even in between the world and everything else. But there was an interesting video that was on Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business. She had a UCLA Professor Lee Oldham on there, and they're talking about the California Exodus and why they are doing it. So we're going to play the video here of Maria Bartow with Lee Oldham, UCLA professor, let's say right-wing university by any means. Here we go. Here's the first part.
From the Golden State business feeling California.
Why am I not getting any sound?
California in droves. The Hoover Institute is finding 3.5 million have left California since 1990. This as large firms, including Oracle, Tesla, Hewlett-Packard, among others, are all announcing relocation plans out of California. Joining me right now is UCLA economics professor, Hoover Institution senior fellow, Lee Ohanian. Lee, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. We've talked a lot about individuals and businesses fleeing high-tax states like New York, New Jersey, even Connecticut. But let's talk about California. What is the reason behind this exodus, in your view?
Good morning, Maria. The root cause really is a failure of governance by state policymakers that's created the 48th worst tax climate in the country and the 48th worst regulatory burden. And those regulatory burdens include regulations that make it extremely difficult and extremely expensive to build housing. And what's happened is that the median priced home in coastal California, areas such as San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, that median priced home is about $1.3 million, Many of those businesses you mentioned are moving to Texas, where that $1.3 million home might cost $400,000. So it's really just a matter of simple economics. California is becoming too expensive and too inefficient compared to alternatives. Economic activity is becoming incredibly fluid, and not surprisingly, people and businesses are leaving.
So that's the first part of it on that. Failure of governance. Flip up the picture on number 4 again there on the shot. There's the guy, UCLA professor Lee Olahan, with Gavin Newsom. It's a failure of governance. The taxes, the regulation, the burdens of that, is what we're distinguishing on that. And it's, as it said, Tesla, Oracle, HP, among firms leaving California. Those are the big names. What they're not saying is all the small to medium-sized businesses that have exited as California over the same taxes and regulations, highest gas prices in the nation, highest housing costs by far, dwarfing anybody else. Well, we're up to $700,000 for the medium home price in California. That's absolutely 100% ridiculous. There is no way. I've said it many times. Business, well, first thing, business only knows one color, and that's green, because it's those green dollar bills which makes it survive. See, it has no conscience. It could care less about you. All it knows is it needs green dollar bills coming in to keep the doors open. And when you cannot survive, when you cannot do that, you either go bankrupt, close down the business, or move it to a location where it can survive. It's very simple. Somehow, some way, we've went from the once golden state that understood the principles of freedom, private property rights, and and being able to succeed and have the opportunity to succeed, to the welfare state, nanny state. I'm going to control every aspect of your life, Gavin Newsom. We're going to play one more shot on the clip. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always say on this program that money is mobile, and it is going to go wherever it is treated best. So as these large firms announce their plans to move, are you expecting other companies to also flee the state in the coming months and years? Assess the impact. What does that mean for California, for the services that are offered, for the budget, et cetera?
Yes, absolutely. The story of California is that many tech firms are created here, they're incubated here because of the enormous amount of venture capital that exists in Silicon Valley and San Francisco and also in Los Angeles. So those businesses start here, but once they're up and running, they tend to skedaddle. For example, Zoom is a relatively new business that's made it very possible for all of us to create video conferencing and webinars. We'll see if Zoom follows that same pattern and ups and leaves and goes to Texas or another friendlier state. And this has enormous consequences for California's budget. Our budget today is about 5 times higher per person inflation adjusted than it was 50 years ago. 2/3 of that budget just goes to K through 12 education, the prison system, and largely Medicaid, which is the insurance program for low-income individuals. About 14 million Californians are on Medicaid. Nearly 40% of Californians are at or near the poverty level. And state legislators need to wake up and understand that they're not using tax revenue very wisely, and that if they don't make changes, more and more businesses are going to leave.
There you go. I mean, you have it right there. More businesses are going to leave, going across the board. I mean, 5 times adjusted for inflation spending, government spending in California versus not too long ago. 2/3 of our budget going to education, prisons, and Medicare. when that was back in those days, that would maybe be 10%. Our prison costs $80,000 per year per prisoner, over 2.5 times the national average at 30,000. 250%. This is where the problem is. Exploding healthcare costs. Taking the free market out of it, running a government healthcare system which has jacked the prices of that. He didn't even mention the energy and the green and the AB 32, the climate change and the carbon credits and the highest gas prices in that. As they said, more businesses are going to leave California on that. Flip up number 4, please, because this is solution. This is Onion's solutions: increasing accountability, improving incentives, competitive tax and regulatory policies, pension reforms, and compensation review. We are in such a big hole. $31 billion in welfare fraud on top of all the other ridiculous spending and that, and keeping us locked down for a year. Revenues are going to be down precipitously. That because look it, if people aren't working, they're not paying taxes. If they're not getting the money they had, and on top of businesses leaving and that tax revenue not there, people not working that are here that were paying taxes are now drawing unemployment or whatever, or staying at home or not collecting it because of that. We're in one humongous, as we should say, heap of trouble going on here. So this is what we got to look forward to. You're going to see one of the biggest sidestep, duck the real problems coming up here in about less than 45 minutes when Gavin Newsom gives his State of the State address. But there is some lining under the table. And y'all know that pretty much, I'm sure most everybody's aware, but as they say in the military, someone always fails to get the message. So there's a little thing called recall going on. RecallGavin2020.com. Up to 1.95 million signatures. We still got to the end of the week to turn them in, so if you haven't done it, get those in. But that's what's putting the pressure on Gavin Newsom to finally start eking out a little bit of this, trickle out a little bit of, we're going to let you have it. Maybe we'll open the schools up a little bit. Maybe we'll open up Disneyland 20% of the time. No, kick the freaking doors down. It's like I explained at the county today when whoever economic task force says, well, we got problems and we're trying to identify them, says, no, you didn't identify them, and this is a problem. You didn't tell the board. They were the ones that started this. They were the ones that didn't sign on to Supervisor Jeff Hewitt's motion 10 months ago to open up the county and get on with life as it should have been. And now we're into that. If you want to get nothing done, form a task force, form a committee to justify your draconian actions. And I didn't want to say the word that I was thinking of that, but that's where we're at to. But they address the recall in it, so we're going to play this last part of the clip here of Doug Ohanian on Fox Business.
More and more businesses are going to leave.
Another reason to take out Governor Newsom. Are you expecting him to get recalled?
Well, the recall campaign needs just under 1.5 million validated signatures. Typically, there's about 20% of signatories that can't be validated. Right now, that campaign is right around that 20% premium. They're at about 1.9 million votes. So it's very possible Newsom could be recalled, which is just shocking given that only about 3 months ago, his approval rating was 67%. It's now down to about 48%.
All right, Lee, thanks very much.
There you go. There's the that. He expects Gavin Newsom to be recalled. It will definitely be on the ballot. No question about it. Well, Unless they could they're going to have to pull some really funny stuff because I think we're going to have over 2.1 million by the time they turn them in. That's going to be 30% over the rate. They really have to do some creative accounting to not certify the election. Then it's on to recalling them. But in a sense, we've already won. At least we're starting to turn the tide, and Gavin Newsom's even going against the teachers' unions like LA we had where they voted 91% to keep the schools closed. And just as a side note on that, maybe we should. Maybe we should just close them down, pull your kids out of school, put them in a private school, homeschool, whatever. They don't, if you just log in, if a kid just logs in on the Zoom meeting for 2 minutes, it's counted as attendance. They get the full pay for that, and that's how they get paid from the state. They get paid for every student that's attending. So all this kid has to do is log in, say I'm here on Zoom, go out and do whatever, go play video games or whatever the heck you're doing, and you're counted. The schools get paid. They don't care as long as their checks are coming in. That's what it's all about on this. It's all about the bottom line dollars on this stuff. And when you look at it, that's where we're at. I want to go to this thing. This is in Reason magazine on that. Just one quote out of it. They're talking about, the even with a good excuse for government action, the state bungled 12 months of the pandemic. Much of the government response to COVID-19 had little or a negative impact on the public. This is by Jason Kuzinski of that coming up. It goes on to read, the bungling didn't end there. The popularity of lockdowns in the West seems to have inspired China's initial efforts to contain and eliminate the virus. Those efforts were futile and did not to contain and eliminate the virus. But the fallback strategy of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, at best, bought a little time while easing the public into lockdowns and business and school closures of indefinite length. We were told that a test and trace system was in the works, though I doubt it ever really had a chance. Either delays in supplying effective government-approved tests hurt from the start, and frequent asymptomatic transmission made contact tracing a fool's errand. A lot of state action has had little or no net benefit. Some of it has made effective private action much harder to some that we have seen, but has put well-intentioned people into a really awkward dilemma. Do we prefer disease or servitude? And that's basically where we're at. Are you so afraid of COVID, of the 0.0001% chance you have of dying, that you're willing to accept the economy lockdown, you lockdown, being treated like a 3-year-old, your kid's education in the tank, letting the teachers' unions, government employees, dingbat bureaucrats run your life? That's what we're down to. That's what the real world evidence of this stuff is. And we go back and forth on this stuff each and every day. Because this is by and far away where it is. COVID is a true killer. Very, very slight chance you will actually die of COVID. But so far, COVID has killed the flu, cancer, heart disease, killed people's ability to even think logically. It has killed our economy, killed the working class, and tens of millions of jobs, and put people's futures in undeniable peril and despair. But even worse, it has killed human connection, love, and compassion. That's what this stuff is about. The biggest tragedy in this whole dilemma is it's been stripping us of our humanity. And, we have Joe Biden in there, and we will have Doug McIntyre on at the bottom or after the bottom of the hour to talk about some of the stuff the 24/7 just panic attacks of everything going on that we're doing that, making us nervous, and illegal immigration. But it wasn't this long. I mean, we all went through the Trump era of that, and people have their opinions on that. Flip up number 4, please. Warning, it's got a little salty language in it, but so all of you with sensitive ears, please tune out for about the next 20 seconds with this President Ronald Reagan barbecuing, have some hot dogs on the grill, and it says, "This is the United States before everybody turned into a bunch of pussies. Yes, that's the president, and yes, that's a beer." This personifies what we had, and the council culture, government's going to tell you what to do. Joe Biden throwing the gates of, the borders wide open so coyotes could make $125,000 to $250,000 a run, stuffing 25 people in an SUV made for 8 people, and telling the Border Patrol to back off and not doing it because they were tracking the one but didn't do anything with the 2, and the one that tragically ended with 13 people losing their lives. Joe Biden owns this. It's his policies. Trump, according to Joe Biden's own staffers, Trump had the border policy under control. Not to mention what? So there was less than, I think, 20 kids a day that the Border Patrol was picking up. Now it's over 400, 500, 600, 700 and climbing, and they're putting them in cages and stuff because they cannot house them fast enough. Because Joe Biden said amnesty for all. Come on in. It's crazy. It's beyond crazy. It's stupid. But we've lost our collective balls to do anything. We sit here and take this stuff. I mean, what? Even in California, gas was just before Biden was elected, gas was under $3 a gallon. Now it's heading to $4 and $5. And I told you, not only in California, but now that you put Joe Biden in presidency, $5 a gallon of gas across the country. He shut down the Keystone Pipeline, and now we will have to buy oil from Middle Eastern countries that have jihadists over there that want to kill us. We were energy independent, which everybody said could not happen. Trump turned that around, as probably Lee Onahan would tell you, was by stripping the regulations, getting rid of the stupid policies, building the Keystone Pipeline and other stretch projects, and actually doing what America does best, and that's kick ass. Whether it's in the military, economically, or stuff, you unleash the power of the American people, and they will accomplish things you would never see in a lifetime. Just like the latest. Energy independence from importing oil to a net energy exporter in 2 years. And we want to go back to the policies of being held hostages by other countries. On top of that, having coyotes run our borders, so companies can use that slave labor, which is what illegal immigrants are used for, That is slave labor, and it's going on today, and it will continue to flourish, not under Donald Trump. It will flourish under Joe Biden. That's the sad state of affairs that we find ourselves in today. But there's always hope. As with the recall effort, hopefully we'll get that
1 minute.
Newsom out of there. They just started today in the 90 days recalling George Gascon, that devious a-hole who got elected as DA of L.A. and is letting not only cop killers, child killers and everything, was refusing to give them the death penalty and even prosecuting them under that, some of the most heinous criminals, and he wants to let them walk.
30 seconds.
We're going to turn this around. There is no other choice. Well, unless you want to live that life of servitude. If you want to lead a life without love, compassion, and that human connection. You got to get it, get after it, and get it done, which we will do.
Okay, here we go. 10
2021.
seconds. .com.
OEM Supply King. We got it!
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
Friday at 5:30 on the Mighty Red 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire on the aforementioned AM band. Join our vast video audience on IE Newswire on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. As the Negative Jesse, our producer today, says we're going to get kicked off of, which he's probably right. Of that, he's doing that. We talked about the recall effort, why the exodus is coming up on in California, back and forth across the board on that. But when we do this, it's going to be all or nothing, all hands on deck. We got to get this done. Recall Newsom all across the board on this stuff, because there is no other way. The brawl at the mall and we're going to do. But as promised, we're going to have a very special guest coming up on that, and it's a big treat for me coming on. Other than when I got this gig about 4 years ago and being a radio talk show host, but I spent my entire life listening to talk radio. And I'd say back in the day, probably the original talk radio station, a lot of people figured that, KABC 790 in Los Angeles. When we were working the race car stuff at midnight or stuff, this guy named Ray Bream used to do the overnight show, and we'd listen to him and Lefty Louise and Vladimir Posner, and then he left the station, and this guy named Doug McIntyre came on and did Red Eye Radio and took over that. So we started listening to him. He finally wound up doing the morning show. Now he writes a column on at the LA Daily News Orange County Register, and out where we're out in the hinterlands. You can read him in the Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, and all that. And it's first time to have him on the show. Welcome to IE Newswire with Roy, Doug McIntyre.
Hey, Roy, how are you?
Absolutely fantastic on that. Your column that you wrote on Sunday really took me. The wokeness is a hot potato head, but really struck me the first part of it and the last part of it, and you're a great writer on that, and you know how to set these things up. But you said it's what really struck me, with the Dr. Seuss thing going on, potato head and all this stuff, but the 24/7, 365 outrage that it seems to be that we're stuck in this cycle on, I think it's got everybody at their wits' end. What do you think, Doug?
Well, I obviously agree. I think that, as I mentioned, there's an entire industry that has built really keeping us at each other's throats, whether it's the web, it's 24-hour cable news, it's social media posts that are relentless, even on Christmas and Easter. Well, we're marinated in controversy, and at some point, you just reach a saturation point, and I just think that individually, if you look at the outrage du jour of last week, Mr. Potato Head and then Dr. Seuss, we can talk about cancel culture, and God knows there's legitimate things to discuss that are real, whether we're going to pull down Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, for Pete's sake. But I just don't have that much emotional energy left that I can commit to the gender of a plastic potato.
Yes, it's almost absurd to me that we're down to this is what upsets or gets people's attention in our society. Not imagine which side you're on and all the chaos and everything that's going on, not only in our state but the nation, on the border, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But they've got us in such a frenzy that we don't even know which way is up, and we're living in this irrational world. How the heck do we get out of it?
Well, I think that, in the arc of history, you look at periods of great turbulence, not just here, but globally. And human beings can't live like this forever. And, most of us, certainly in my age range, remember the 60s and the 70s. We remember the incredible turbulence of assassinations and the Vietnam War and all the liberation movements and race riots and cities burning. And then it finally kind of culminated with Nixon resigning. And there was just this exhaustion. And for 10 years, we drove AMC Pacers and listened to bad disco music. It's like you just can't live as if every event that comes across the perpetual breaking news chyron on all the news channels. By definition, all news is breaking. So it's overhyped. And again, it's not that there aren't issues to discuss in the so-called cancel culture, but I'm willing to bet anything that what happened with Mr. Potato Head is somebody at Hasbro said, look, we got two boxes, one Mr. Potato Head, Mrs. Potato Head. We can cut our inventory in half by putting them in the same box. We got one box instead of two. It'll streamline shipping. And if we say we're doing it for gender equality, we'll get some virtue signaling points. And to me, it makes a mockery of the actual issue of people who are transphobic or biased against transsexuals. I just find it hard to believe that somebody's self-esteem is tied up into the tubers. I just don't buy it. Everybody is entitled to be outraged by what they want, but I just am done with it. I just don't have the room for it.
And if we weren't going through the vast, as I call it, knee in our neck of America this past year on that, this sort of subject would not even have come up. I mean, it just wouldn't. Even if they would have tried to pull something like this, it would have been laughed out of. You would have thought it was something from The Onion or something, a spoof coming on that they're actually doing this. But this is the reality we're living in.
Yeah, and look, if you go back 30 years, and if you said that Christopher Columbus would become a war criminal, and there is politics behind this. For instance, when the city of Los Angeles did away with Columbus Day, they replaced it with Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, they didn't call it Native American Day, which I think everybody would have been perfectly happy with. Oh, we're going to have a holiday to celebrate Native Americans and the tremendous cultural impact that they have obviously had. But it was more radical than that, because the idea was to go to pre-Western Civ, it had to be pre-Columbian, pre-Columbus. And so there is a radical element to this, and we certainly can discuss that. But I'm just saying that our lives are greatly improved if we don't take the bait at every single one of these things and run online and start posting until our thumbs fall off. As if, Western... I mean, when you got Glendom, that it's the end of freedom of America over a plastic potato, I mean, I have more faith in America than that. I don't think we're that fragile.
I hope we're not, somehow I'm suspecting we're getting to that point, and that's what worries me. Is another, and I haven't even discussed it, the whole thing with Oprah and that whole interview thing, because I find the whole thing like that so absurd that people are even, why are you even paying attention to this stuff? It shouldn't even be on the radar screen. You shouldn't even talk to it. Dr. Seuss books should be available to anybody that wants to buy them, and I don't care if you got the writings of Hitler, and you're far more versed on history than I am, but
well,
I
by
don't
the
want.
way, you can you go to BarnesandNoble.com right now. You can buy Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
Mein Kampf is in print, but Dr. Seuss isn't. And I just want to clarify: most of Dr. Seuss is in print. It's 6 specific books.
Yes.
And look, I am not blind to the fact that there are things that were created in earlier periods of time that were culturally acceptable. And the culture has moved on from that. For instance, I'm a jazz guy, and there's a jazz classic called "Birth of the Blues" that's been recorded hundreds and hundreds of times. Great song. And Bing Crosby did a version of it in the very early 1930s with the original lyrics, which has the word "darkies" in it. Now, most people would say, that's outlived its usefulness, and we have moved on from that language, and I don't have a problem with that. But there is a difference between being sensitive and burning witches. And far too many times now we go to witch burning, where people get mad at something, oftentimes something that they haven't even seen, heard, or read. And this cuts in both directions. When Rush Limbaugh died, there were all kinds of people posting on how they hated him, and they never actually listened to him. They only heard what he had said. They never actually listened. And I don't think that we should be so quick to censor in this country, left or right. And yet that's what we're doing. And the ethos has become, if you put one of ours in a hospital, we're going to put one of yours in the cemetery. And this becomes a circular firing squad for a society that is dependent upon the free exchange of ideas.
And this is, well, like I said, the Edwin Burke deal. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And if you don't want these things to come back, you want to preserve that. And like you said, most people don't have a problem with some of the stuff, or some of the questionable stuff was done. But if you eliminate it from society, that's the danger of it, and it probably is. It will come back because there's no record of it. It's saying, okay, this is what we did. It was wrong at this time. We're not doing it now, and this is why.
Yeah, I just don't have a problem with that. At the time that Dr. Seuss wrote the 6 books and illustrated the 6 books, America as a culture, culturally, in terms of commercial culture, was very white. And now we're much more diverse, and the other ethnic groups that have arrived in America in greater and greater numbers have reached a level of equality where they're just looking back and saying, that's not really the most flattering representation of who we are. And if that's how they feel, the publisher and the Dr. Seuss Foundation was responding, believe it or not, to market forces. It was free market capitalism, not the government, that got 6 books from the Dr. Seuss catalog squelched. So that's a business decision, and they have every right, if they want to take it out of circulation, fine. The books are going to exist. I mean, the books are not going to vanish from the planet. The catalog will continue to be sold and loved, by the way, because Dr. Seuss was a creative genius that tapped into some kind of universal message that kids and adults love. So I don't worry. I will be gone long before Dr. Seuss will be gone.
We're talking to Doug McIntyre. He writes a Sunday column in the LA Daily News, Orange County Register, Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun. And I want to get to and you ended this Sunday's column, I thought, really great. And where we really should be focusing, the real hot potato, I believe, or one of them, and what we should be discussing, is what's going on at the border. I mean, we had the tragedy in Holtville of where we are letting the coyotes run the deal. And it broke in the UK Daily Mail. The 25 people were paying anywhere from 5 to 10,000. That means 25,000 people that were in a expedition that was only set for 8. That was $125,000 to $250,000 haul that goes in there. Joe Biden owns this. He took down Trump's policies, and I forgot to get the clip of the administration official in Biden's administration that said Trump's immigration policies were working, and we are just in 2 months we have destroyed them, and if we don't get it under control, we are going to have a disaster of epic proportions.
Well, I'm not sure that Trump's immigration policies were working. I don't think anybody's immigration policies have been working. Former President Trump talked a very big game, and I will give him credit for this. He pushed the issue when neither party really wanted to talk about it. They paid less than lip service for different reasons. And he did shove it onto the front burner. But unfortunately, what he did, in my opinion, was he was so ham-fisted in the way he presented the issue that it was just red meat for the people who already agreed with him. But he attracted no new supporters on the issue. And that was unfortunate because what stopped the massive violation of our sovereignty at the southern border was COVID. When the job market got torpedoed, when the economy took a torpedo because of COVID, people stopped coming into the country because there was no jobs for anybody. And, of course, as soon as COVID starts to lift, and now Joe Biden is going to go back to the Obama policies, I'm so angry about this because this is not a problem that was beamed down from Alpha Centauri. This is a very solvable problem if we could simply come to some common sense conclusions, which is the Reagan amnesty was a failure because the right agreed to an amnesty for 2.5 million people for increased border security. And we got the amnesty, but we never got the border security. And now we have 11 to 20 million people who came across the border in the intervening years. And we're fools if we take that deal again. I personally believe that the burden is on those who want the amnesty to show the border security, secure all the other problems, including DACA. I don't believe in punishing children for something they had nothing to do with. If their parents brought them here, but they were raised in this country, then that's not their fault. But what would be crazy would be to issue get out of jail free cards and free passes, and you'll end up with another 11 to 20 million people coming in the country. And it's bad for the poor. It tightens the housing market at the lowest end. It prices people onto the sidewalks that contributed to the homeless issue, and on and on and on. We can see how this issue is a boulder in a pond, not a pebble in a pond, and it sends out waves in all directions, and it's solvable, but we can't get our politics straight. And that's a real tragedy. And I personally don't believe that former President Trump helped us, because by just talking about rapists and murderers, and he didn't make an argument that was compelling to attract people who would have been open to the argument if they were presented both sides. And he was uniquely positioned to do that because he was willing to talk about the issue, whereas the other Republicans really weren't. They wanted cheap labor in the country. They wanted to insource cheap laborers to drive down construction jobs prices and meat packing and the crabbing industry in Maryland. You can't outsource fresh meat to the market, and you can't outsource a driveway paver. The workers got to be where the driveway is. So this was a business decision that the Chamber of Commerce people wanted cheap labor in the country. So on the left, you had open border people who figured those are future voters for us or customers for social welfare programs that they administer. And on the right, you had these corporatists who wanted cheap labor for the jobs they couldn't ship overseas. And most people just wanted secure borders. That's all we wanted. Just make sure that another 20 million people can't cut the line.
Exactly, and I mean they're jumping on. According to the reports from the Border Patrol now, they said it's like it's almost like a wave of ocean coming in. They're just flooding across the border because
the word got out that Biden is going to go back to a much loosey-gooseier policy, and with the COVID vaccine rollout, the job market's going to improve and is improving. So again. The lure of employment and of the improvement of quality of life. Look, if I were born in Central America in desperate poverty, I would do everything in my power to get across that border. And so I totally understand why people want to come here. But as a nation, all nations, not just us, every nation on earth has an immigration policy for the benefit of the nation. And we have lost sight of that because we keep getting bludgeoned as if it's racist to have a sovereign borders into feeling guilty for this. But every nation has an immigration policy for the benefit of the nation. Now, ideally, the immigrants who come to your country, you want them to do well because a rising tide lifts all boats. You certainly don't want to bring people in and then keep them living in poverty and dependency. But you can't ever have the boats rise if you're constantly asking the latest arrivals to compete with even poorer people who just got here. That's why Cesar Chavez was opposed to illegal immigration, because he understood that the migrant workers who were here were getting kicked off the ladder of success by more people showing up who are even poorer.
Exactly, and I've said this many times. I said the 20th century, really, if you want to boil it down, the 20th century slaves are in the United States are those that come over here illegally, because the aforementioned employers of them know they've got a stick over them. They do not have to follow rules or regulations. They can overwork them, do that, and if they give them any lip, you know what? We're just shipping your rear right back across the border. That's to me one of the biggest tragedies in this whole situation.
Well, this is, and I'm going to roy a few. This is one of my half-baked theories, but this is a global phenomenon too. It's not just America. We are living in an age, because of jet travel and the internet and easy access to information, where the mass migrations of people is happening all over the world. It's been going on in Germany. It's been going on in France. Even Bohemian libertine Holland has started to tighten up their borders because they were getting overwhelmed. No culture can survive the mass importation of millions of people illegally. It's not viable. There has to be some controls on this, and there can be. And you can still have a humane policy where you bring in people who are being genuinely oppressed and need sanctuary. But this idea that as long as you can get into the country, now the country owes you is not sustainable. It's not humane, because there's a ripple effect to society that comes with a great cost. But it's very frustrating that presidents come and presidents go, and we are still having the same arguments that we were having 35 years ago.
Exactly. And I mean, like you said, not that I don't care, but we should. If everybody would sit down at the table and come up with a sane policy, and that's what the framers of the Constitution, in my view, said. That's why they left it at the purview of the Congress to make those decisions, because at any time in history or in the future, you're going to be at a different state. There's no you can say, well, we're going to let 100,000 in maximum or only 10, but it has to be a coherent policy that's going to work for everybody involved. And for almost all of my lifetime, we have not had that policy, and that's the tragedy. We got about a minute left. I'll let you wrap it up.
And everybody gets to make their own decisions on what they care about. And, some people care about Meghan and Harry, and some people are really wrapped up about Mr. Potato Head, and some people care about immigration, either pro or open borders or anti-open borders. So it's not my place to tell you what you should or shouldn't be upset about. But what I will tell you, from having worked for so many years inside the belly of the beast, inside media, we are being played far too often. We're being played by both political parties who trot out red herring issues or make big meals out of nothing because it fires up the base, and then they use it to fundraise and to get out the vote. And then, of course, there's ratings gold in controversy. So the more controversial the subject, people run with the ball, and the next thing you know, everybody's hot and bothered and posting memes. As a general rule, I now have my own philosophy is, if it can be reduced to a meme, it's not worth worrying about.
Yeah, you got it, and I couldn't agree more with that. Thanks for being on, Doug. We'll do it again.
Having me.
You got it. That was Doug McIntyre. You can read his columns every Sunday in the LA Daily News, Orange County Register, Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, and a bunch of other papers all across Southern California. I always appreciate that. of that. And, and over the years, and I've listened to Doug a lot, when he was on the radio and stuff and read his columns, and they're saying a lot of things I agree with, a few that I don't, but we can have civil conversations about it, and that's how we will come to if we would sit down and do this, that's how we would come to solve problems like COVID or illegal immigration or, housing prices or the homeless or everything else. But if we just, as he said, and like he said, he's been in it far longer than me, out to be played here in about 5 minutes. Because Gavin Newsom's going to do his State of the State. We're going to, as soon as we sign up with this, stay tuned to IE Newswire on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. We'll put up doofus Governor Gavin Newsom, soon to be recalled, or at least be on the ballot to be recalled, Gavin Newsom, his State of the State address. And this is what we have going on today. And he's going to double talk you. He's going to step around all of the pertinent issues. He's not going to address the $31 billion of welfare fraud, the sham of the bullet train to nowhere, which has had another $1 billion close to of cost overruns and still hasn't run 1 mile of service. What have we spent $10 billion on that and counting up to $100 billion for tracks for a bullet train from Bakersfield to Merced? I mean, that's stupidity at its finest. But you're about to hear that. We'll be broadcasting it. Giving you all the news and views on that. We'll even hopefully have some commentary on that. And then if you don't catch it or you want to pick up on it later, we'll have it archived along with our shows every day on IE Newswire, so you can check it out whenever you can on that. It was a pleasure to have Doug McIntyre on. I've never actually met him. Like I said, I've listened to him a long time, but he's a great guest, great columnist, and has a very common sense viewpoint on a lot of things. So hopefully we'll have him on again real soon on that. We'll be coming back tomorrow on a Wicked Wednesday. On top of that, after that, then I'm sure we'll have something to say about Governor Hairgel's State of the State speech that will be coming up here in about 4 or 5 minutes. And so it's been fun. Hopefully we'll come up, and as we did, we come up with solutions. The solutions are easy. Implementing them is the hard part on that. Even trying to get 2 computer screens to work. That's an inside joke around here tomorrow. We'll be back.